A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to the series of Friday sermon discussions brought to you by Majlis Quran Ahmadiyya UK Tarbiyat Department on the Friday sermons delivered by Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Eda Abdullah bin Nasir Aziz. I am today joined by two respected Murabiyan, Rabib Mirza Sahib and Mudabbir Deen Sahib. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to both of you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, we've been blessed with some brilliant weather this weekend. We're up and down the country as far as I'm aware, and where I am, it's wonderful weather. And this weekend would have been the weekend of the annual Jalsa Salana UK. And Hazur actually mentioned that as part and parcel of the khutbah that he mentioned today. And off the back of that, actually, Mudabbir Sahib, I'm going to come to you with our first question. So obviously, like I said, the UK Jalsa was supposed to be planned this weekend, but was cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic. Can you explain how the loss of Jalsa Salana will impact members of the Jamaat and what has been planned to replace the proceedings that we've lost?
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan. As you all know, Hazur Anwar Ayyadahu Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz, he began his khutbah by saying that today is the 7th of March, and it would have the 7th of August, sorry, and it would have been the very first day of Jalsa Salana UK 2020. And Hazur mentioned that due to the coronavirus and the pandemic that has taken the world, we are unable to get together for this international Jalsa. At the same time, Hazur mentioned, but he has instructed MTA International to, of course, try and replace some of those moments to bring people the experience of Jalsa to the people that can't obviously experience it because of the virus. Obviously, those of us that have experienced Jalsa know that this broadcast on MTA, it cannot 100% replace the whole Jalsa experience, because there's that brotherhood, especially the UK Jalsa having that international status, where people from all around the world come together to see the Imam, and there's a sense of brotherhood and unity. So obviously, these three days of special broadcasts that will be going live on MTA International, they cannot replace Jalsa Salana. But because the broadcasts involve the various speeches of Hazur Anwar Ayyadahu Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz over the past years at different occasions, at different Jalsas throughout the world, therefore it is a suitable replacement in this situation. So Hazur Anwar mentioned that, as is the case, as is usually what usually happens, that on the second day of Jalsa Salana, Hazur Anwar usually presents a detailed report of the progress of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community throughout the whole world in that year that has passed. And Hazur mentioned that even though during this broadcast that we will be playing, the past 3 years of mentioned different Jalsas, I instructed MTA not to play the previous year's report. Rather, I would deliver the new report myself. So the khutbah was primarily, this week's khutbah was primarily the first half of that report. And as we mentioned, that the coming Sunday, I will deliver the second part of this extensive report at around 4 p.m. So that was the suitable replacement that Hazur mentioned to replace Jalsa Salana UK.
So although we're recording this program on a Saturday, with the Friday sermon being recorded yesterday, it's our intention that this won't be released until after the full Jalsa proceedings have aired on MTA. So we urge all the viewers to go onto the MTA YouTube channels to watch back those addresses that you haven't been able to watch, and all the programs that have been delivered by MTA and that Hazur mentioned as well. But I'm just going to quickly come back to you in respect to the whole situation that's happening right now. As members of Jamaat and as individuals, what are we actually missing in this time, just by missing the Jalsa?
So I mean, the whole purpose that the Prophet Messiah mentioned, that the purpose of Jalsa is, of course, primarily to get closer to God Almighty, to have a connection with God Almighty. And secondly, he said the purpose is to form a sense of brotherhood. Now, of course, being restricted in our homes and some parts of the world and even some parts of the UK currently going through a lockdown, it's very difficult for us to gather together and, of course, unsafe for everyone. So for that reason, that sense of brotherhood is something that we might be lacking this year because obviously we cannot get together. And I mean, the part of this Jalsa's proceedings that they mentioned that will be shown in MTA, they mentioned that we will be taking your messages and video recordings to try and again replace that feeling. But of course, we all know, those who have experienced Jalsa, that it cannot replace it. But to try and find a suitable substitute for that scenario, to try and bring the whole world of Ahmadiyyat together, listening to his speeches and tuned in to Jalsa Standard UK.
And I guess that one thing that we still have and we are blessed with are the words of our Khalifa and the words of Hazur. Not only are we blessed with a Friday sermon every week, but this week we're also going to be blessed with that address that you've mentioned in terms of the second half of that report. That brings me on to quite nicely to the next element of this program, which is an extract of the khutbah that Hazur delivered this Friday. It's our tradition that we include some extracts of the khutbah itself. So let's watch the first of those extracts now.
اس رپورٹ کے خاص نکات پیش کرنے سے پہلے میں حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کے دو ارشادات پیش کروں گا، جس میں جو ان آیات کی کچھ حد تک وضاحت کرتی ہیں جو میں نے ابھی تلاوت کی ہیں. اور حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کا یہ واضح اور کھلا اعلان بھی سامنے آ جاتا ہے کہ اب اسلام کی تبلیغ کے لیے، اسلام کے اس نشر ثانیہ کے دور میں، اس کا نشر ثانیہ کا جو دور ہے وہ آپ سے ہی وابستہ ہے، اور تمام تر مخالفتوں کے باوجود آپ کے سلسلے نے انشاءاللہ تعالی پھلنا ہے، پھولنا ہے اور پھیلنا ہے، اور یہ اللہ تعالیٰ کا وعدہ ہے. اور جو رپورٹ اور واقعات میں پیش کروں گا وہ خود بول رہے ہیں کہ آپ کا دعویٰ صرف دعویٰ ہی نہیں بلکہ اللہ تعالیٰ کی تائیدات اور نصرت کے ساتھ، نصرت آپ کے ساتھ اور آپ کی جماعت کے ساتھ ہے، اور کوئی دنیا کی طاقت نہیں جو اس ترقی کو روک سکے. حضرت مسیح علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام فرماتے ہیں تخمیناً عرصہ 20 برس گزرا ہے کہ مجھ کو اس قرآنی آیت کا الہام ہوا تھا، اور وہ یہ ہے هو الذی ارسل رسولہ بالہدی ودین الحق لیظہرہ علی الدین کلہ. وہ خدا جس نے اپنے رسول کو ہدایت اور سچے دین کے ساتھ بھیجا تا وہ اپنے دین کو تمام دنیا پر غالب کرے. اور فرمایا، اور مجھ کو اس الہام کے یہ معنی سمجھائے گئے تھے کہ میں خدا تعالیٰ کی طرف سے اس لیے بھیجا گیا ہوں کہ تا میرے ہاتھ سے خدا تعالیٰ اسلام کو تمام دینوں پر غالب کرے. اور اس جگہ یاد رہے کہ یہ قرآن شریف میں ایک عظیم الشان پیش گوئی ہے جس کی نسبت علماء محققین کا اتفاق ہے کہ یہ مسیح موعود کے ہاتھ پر پوری ہوگی. جس قدر اولیاء اور ابدال مجھ سے پہلے گزرے ہیں، کسی نے ان میں سے اپنے تئیں اس پیش گوئی کا مصداق نہیں ٹھہرایا اور نہ یہ دعویٰ کیا کہ اس آیت مذکورہ بالا کا مجھ کو اپنے حق میں الہام ہوا ہے. لیکن جب میرا وقت آیا تو مجھ کو یہ الہام ہوا اور مجھ کو بتلایا گیا کہ اس آیت کا مصداق تو ہے، اور تیرے ہی ہاتھ سے اور تیرے ہی زمانے میں دین اسلام کی فوقیت दूसरे दिनों पर साबित होगी। फिर आप फरमाते हैं कि ये सिर्फ इस्लाम ही है जो ज़िंदा मज़हब है, यही है जिसका रबी हमेशा आता है, यानी बाहर का मौसम इसमें हमेशा आता है, जबकि उसके दरख्त सरसब्ज़ होते हैं और शीरीं और लजीज फल देते हैं। उसके सिवा और कोई मज़हब या खूबी नहीं रखता, ये खूबी नहीं रखता। अगर इसमें ये खूबी निकाल दी जाए तो ये भी मुर्दा हो जाता है, मगर नहीं, वो ज़िंदा मज़हब है। अल्लाह ताला ने हर ज़माने में इसकी ज़िंदगी का सबूत दिया है। चुनाचे इस ज़माने में भी उसने अपने फजल से इस सिलसिले को इसलिए कायम किया है ता वो इस्लाम के ज़िंदा मज़हब होने पर गवाह हो और ता खुदा की मार्फत बढ़े और उस पर ऐसा यकीन पैदा हो जो गुनाह और गंदगी को भस्म कर जाता है और नेकी और पाकीज़गी फैलाता है।
So we just watched an extract of the Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Amir al-Momineen. Rabib Saab, I'm now going to come to you in regards to our second question. So Hazur mentioned about the progress that the Jamaat has made in the khutbah itself. Can you give us some key highlights that Hazur mentioned and also maybe share an incident in this regard?
Absolutely. So Hazur Anwarullah Ta'ala bin Aziz stated that by the grace of Allah, in the past year, apart from Pakistan, 288 new Jamaats were established in the world, and the seed of Ahmadiyyat had been sown in 1,040 new places. In this regard, Hazur mentioned that Sierra Leone is at the top of the list, then Congo, Kinshasa, and Ghana in third place. So there are various incidents that Hazur mentioned in regards to new Jamaats being established around the world and in new places. So just to mention two incidents from that. Hazur mentioned that a local muallim from Congo Kinshasa wrote to Hazur and Waliullah Ta'ala bin Aziz that when the local cleric of a village heard a program of the Jamaat on the radio, he came to the mosque and began asking many questions. When he was given answers and given further material to study, he realized the truth and accepted Ahmadiyyat. Upon returning to his village, he conveyed this message, and thus 20 more people entered the fold of Ahmadiyyat. So again, in one sense, it's showing that this revelation that was vouchsafed to the promised Messiah, والسلام, that I shall cause thy message to reach the corners of the world. God Almighty is undertaking this task personally, and we are seeing in places, outside of that small rustic hamlet of Qadian, that the message of Ahmadiyyat is spreading far and wide. And further, His Holiness mentioned another incident, and these incidents truly show the beauty of how the Jamaat is spreading far and wide. So His Holiness mentioned that the Amir of Senegal, again an incident from Africa, wrote to His Holiness that a group went to a town to preach the message of Islam Ahmadiyyat. Upon going there, they found two sects were at odds and had decided that they would wait for the coming of the Messiah. They were given some literature, and then this group returned again to the village. The local people said that upon reading the literature of the Jamaat, they realized that this was the community of the Messiah for whom they had been waiting. So again, very beautifully, it shows that the message of Ahmadiyyat is being accepted by people of all races, all creeds, and all cultures in this manner.
Jazakallah for that, Rabib Saab, and for that explanation. And I guess it goes back again to something that Mudabbir Saab said about the Jalsa being having such an international flavor, and then all of these instances that are another report that Hazur was mentioning has such an international flavor as well. And like he said, about the prophecy of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, about the the success and the progress of the Jamaat is being made is shown in the details of the reports and all the new Jamaats that as were announced, especially in this year where it's been so difficult to do many things, and we've been somewhat hampered by the coronavirus pandemic. Did you mention anything in that regard?
I mean, absolutely. You know, the fact of the matter is that you know, this unfortunately we are living at a time where, you know, there is a pandemic, very contagious disease is spreading and has spread throughout the world. But we must remember that we are a community whose foundation has been laid by a prophet of God. And the fact of the matter is that this seed has been sown by God Almighty Himself. So therefore, our progress, you know, our success does not stop. You know, we keep on, as the term is, that the show keeps on running in this manner. So we always see that, you know, even in spite of these hardships, God Almighty has blessed us in this regards. And, you know, the promised Messiah has mentioned in you know, one of his couplets as well, that gharaz rukte nahi khuda ke kaam bandon se, that the work of God, you know, it doesn't rely on the hands of man, because God Almighty is almighty, is all powerful Himself. Therefore, these tasks, God Almighty, you know, undertakes them personally as well. You know, just in regards to the way that the Jamaat is you know, spreading in this regards as well, and the scale of voluntary work. His Holiness has also mentioned about Vakar Amal, you know, which is a key feature of the Jamaat. So His Holiness mentioned that.
And that's something actually, Rabib Sahib, that we'll mention as part and parcel of the khutbah as well. So if I could just take a pause there, and then maybe actually get to a point where we move on to our next question now with Mudabbir Sahib. So Mudabbir Sahib, Hazur presented a report regarding the establishment of new mosques around this fact. Can you share some facts and an incident in this regard?
So Hazur's second-day report that Hazur delivers on Jalsa Salana usually involves various subjects. As Reeves mentioned, one of them is the establishment of new missions. Then you have the new books that the Jamaat has printed, and various other projects that the Jamaat has done throughout the year. One of those subjects, or one of those topics, is the establishment of new mosques throughout the year. And Hazur mentioned that this year, by the grace of Allah, 217 new mosques had been established. And of those 217, 124 were newly built. And 93 of those were from existing mosques that had been acquired. And someone might be thinking, okay, these might all be in one country or in one continent. But in fact, these were over 4 continents. So the majority of the world, these new mosques had been established by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Hazur mentioned various incidents, but I've picked out 2 that I can mention. And the way I picked them was that these 2, they're personally related. I've been to these places myself, and I've seen those places, so therefore I chose them. The first was in Norway, in Kristiansand. And what happened is that the Jamaat had acquired an office building for their congregational prayers and for their get-togethers or their functions. After some time, the Jamaat wanted to convert that, renovate that into a purpose-built mosque. But the Jamaat received a lot of opposition. So from the neighbors and from the residents surrounding that place, the Jamaat received a lot of opposition. And this continued for about 2 years. And what happened is that nearby that office mosque, that office building, there's also a church. And the church was also part of the opposition that didn't want to build that mosque. Allah worked in mysterious ways, and what happened was really remarkable. The church, after a few months, the church contacted the council and said that we are unable to maintain this church ourselves. So now we will have to sell. This is the last option we have. They had no resources. And they contacted the council with this proposal. The council suggested to them that the Ahmadiyya community here in Norway, in Kristiansand, they are looking for a place to build a mosque. So why don't you contact them? And the church contacted the Jamaat, and after they had done all the checks, they got approval from Huzur Anwar, and this year the church was sold and the keys were handed over to the Jamaat. And it's amazing how from an office building they were able to convert this church that initially that opposed the building of a mosque. Now the church is being built into a mosque and has been, in fact, it's near its kind of stages. And it's amazing how Allah works in mysterious ways, that the very people that were opposing the structure of the mosque, they were involved in actually giving that permission and involved in the scenario of the whole mosque coming into existence, in fact. And the second incident that I wanted to mention is Mali. And that place that Hazur mentioned, Bamako, is the actual center of the markaz, in fact, of the Mali Jamaat. And not too far from there, there's a village where a mosque was being built. The mosque took some time, and finally it was at the end of its final stages, just finishing touches. But all of a sudden, the chief of that village, for some reason, he stopped the construction. And this was very surprising to the Jamaat as well. They asked around and they found out that the chief had received some negative responses and some negative rumors about the Jamaat. And for that reason, he had stopped the construction. So for a period of about 2-3 years, the Jamaat tried to persuade the chief and told him that, look, we are not like that. We are a very peaceful community. We worship one God, and all we want to do is build a mosque. After about 3 years, the chief changed his mind, and he allowed the mosque to be completed. But he mentioned one thing. He said, I want to praise your community. I want to praise your Jamaat. And the reason is that you showed such patience in this whole scenario. And Hazur said that the chief gave the example of another sect, the Wahhabi sect, that were also trying to build a mosque. But they were also stopped at that village. They were stopped from building the mosque. But instead of being patient, the Wahhabi sect to use their influence, their political influence, and other connections, as you say, to get the deal done, to get the mosque built. And the chief said to the Jamaat that, you also have this political influence, you also have connections in very high places, and you could have used that to get the mosque built, but you didn't, but you showed patience. And for that reason, the whole village and the chief, they apologized to the Jamaat that, we are very wrong, and they promised for the mosque to be built. And in fact, as we mentioned, that now as we speak, there are prayers being offered inside that mosque. And that shows that how patience takes, how far it takes to, in fact.
And that's another one of the very many lessons that we learn from the khutbah of Hazur. And it's with examples we get to hear about these great blessings and these great personality traits and attitudes that we should have in various times of difficulty and in times of good times as well. So Jazakallah for that, Mudabbir Sahib described that very well. We're now going to move on to our second extract of the khutbah. So let's watch that now.
तंजानिया के सिमियो रीजन के से मौलम लिखते हैं कि गुज़श्ता साल कायम होने वाली जमात में इस साल मस्जिद और मिशन हाउस की तामीर हुई। इस दौरान ईसाइयों के एक पादरी ने पूछा कि ये घर किस लिए बनाया जा रहा है। उन्होंने बताया गया कि जमात के मौलम की रिहाइश है। इस पर उन्होंने हैरत का इजहार किया कि इस गांव में ईसाइयों के 6 चर्च हैं और अक्सर फ़िरके लंबे अरसे से इस गांव में आबाद हैं। उनमें से किसी एक को भी ये तौफीक नहीं हुई कि अपने पादरी की रिहाइश तामीर कर सकें। यकीनन आप लोग अपने मजहबी रहनुमाओं की इज़्ज़त और एहतराम करते हैं और अपने मोटो मोहब्बत सब के लिए नफ़रत किसी से नहीं पर पूरा अमल करते हैं। और ये मिसाल दूसरों को भी अपनानी चाहिए। जमात अहमदिया का एक ख़ुसूसी इम्तियाज़ व कार-ए-अमल है। इस साल जो अफ्रीका के मुख्तलिफ़ ममालिक में मसाजिद और मिशन हाउसेस बनाए गए और दूसरी काम किए गए, उसमें 148 ममालिक से मौसूला रिपोर्ट के मुताबिक 114 मुल्कों में कुल 41,111 वक़ाए अमल किए गए, जिनके ज़रिए से 52,13,000 US डॉलर्स की बचत हुई है। अब अगर मस्जिद जो अफ्रीका में बनती है उसके अखराजात को देखें तो इसका मतलब है तकरीबन वक़ाए अमल की रकम से जो बचत हुई है उससे 10 मज़ीद मस्जिदें बनाने की अल्लाह ताला ने जमात को तौफीक दे दी। इस तरह अल्लाह ताला हमारे पैसे में भी बरकत डालता है।
So we just watched the second extract of the khutbah delivered by Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Dawud bin Nasir Aziz, and Hazur also mentioned the element of Waqari Amal and element of voluntary work that gets put into all of our activities and was part and parcel of his report. Rabib Sahib, you mentioned that earlier, and I'm going to come back to you now in regards to our final question. So Hazur also mentioned in the khutbah about the Recruiting Press in the UK and all the work that they're undertaking. Can you just give us some background to all of this?
Absolutely, Jazakallah. So, as you know, that one very vital way of propagating the message of Islam is through, literature, and, out of that, books, folders, pamphlets. So, in this regards, the Jamaat was also blessed this year that the Reqeem Press, it's done extraordinary work, and now it's been also established in 8 countries of Africa under the supervision of the Reqeem Press in the UK. So during the past year, the Reqeem Press in UK has printed over 360,000 books. And actually, one of the salient features of this year that Hazur mentioned was in regards to the newly published Holy Quran. I'm sure maybe that many people have seen that video of that beautiful Holy Quran, and this is what Hazur was actually talking about. That for 6 to 7 years, the Jamaat in Qadian, they had been working on a font known as Khat-e-Manzoor, which is generally the when we read our Yasnul Quran, we're generally accustomed to that font, and it's a very simple and easy font for everyone to read. And now Hazur Anwar Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz has mentioned that in the future, when the Holy Quran is going to be published, so alongside whatever translation is going to be published with it, font is now going to be used, and this font is actually unique to the Jamaat. So the Jamaat in Qadian, they work tirelessly and effortlessly to make this font, and now it's going to be used by the Jamaat. So this is, one sense, this is one of the fonts that one can identify the Jamaat by. So again, it shows that even despite the great restrictions and hardships that we're facing around the world and in some countries, in particularly just to reading the Holy Quran, but God Almighty has opened up so many avenues, and now the book of God Almighty, we are being granted that opportunity to publish it with different languages and promulgate that message to the corners of the world. So very beautifully, this is happening. And just apart from that, apart from the Reqeem Press in UK, His Holiness also mentioned in regards to the publications, and Hazur mentioned that a total of around over 4.2 million publications were published in 93 countries. And Hazur mentioned that those include 407 different books in 42 different languages. So again, the Jamaat is, it's reaching, new leaps and new bounds. It's covering new leaps and bounds. And just in regards to the publications, the literature, because obviously when that literature is published, then we don't only just sell it and that's the end of it. But we actually go out to promote this literature in various exhibitions and bookstores, and there are various incidents in regards to them. I mean, just for one example, that at our peace symposiums as well, we also promote that literature. We have an exhibition of that literature, and one incident was in regards to there was a peace symposium in India, in one of the areas in India. I believe maybe it was Agra, or it was another place that's not present in my mind at the moment. But there was a gentleman from Afghanistan, and when he had some sort of misconception, but when the Jamaat told him about the coming of the promised Messiah, the advent of the Imam Mahdi, and it's being fulfilled in the personage of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, and then they actually read an excerpt of the promised Messiah والسلام, in regards to the high station of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. He was so overawed and he became so emotional that the gentleman who was reading that excerpt before him, the Afghan gentleman, actually went and kissed him on his forehead, and he said that this is the true Islam. So with this literature as well, the message of Islam, the message of God Almighty, the message of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, the message that the promised Messiah has come is now out in the open, and it's going to all the corners of the world, and people are truly benefiting from this literature. I mean, in regards to just another small incident, I'll summarize it a little bit. In regards to Finland, when they held their peace symposium as well, the one gentleman was given the book, the philosophy of the teachings of Islam, and that moved him extremely, to a point where he admitted that the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he was not only a religious leader, but he was also accustomed to the morals of human nature as well. And he especially liked this part of the book, the philosophy of the teachings of Islam, where the promised Messiah has spoken about khulq, as in the morals of a person. And that shows that the literature that we are producing, it is seeping into the hearts of every person at every sector within society. So again, God Almighty is blessing us day by day, and the fact of the matter is that even though we are facing opposition, we are facing persecution, but we've just seen, this is just the first part of this year's report, and inshallah we will hear the second part as well, that even in spite of all this, God Almighty is blessing us. We are progressing, we are reaching or leaping in new bounds as well in this regards. So the progress of the Jamaat is unstoppable, and at the end of the day, the final victory is going to be ours. So this is the way that the progress of the Jamaat is happening.
Inshallah, and it's been wonderfully presented by yourself, Rabib Sahib. So Jazakallah for that. That also then brings us to the end of our discussion program. I'd like to thank you, Rabib Sahib, and say Jazakallah for all your descriptions of all the questions. But Rabib Sahib, I would again also like to say Jazakallah, and I will also give you the final word before we end.
Jazakallah, Qasim Saab. So just to summarize, like as you mentioned, that this, even though we are not having just the standard UK 2020, the best way, as you gave us an instruction, that sit at home and try and increase your spiritual and your religious knowledge by watching the various live shows and the sermons and the speeches of Hazrat Sayyid Masih, and the various documentaries that NTA will be presenting for over the past 3 days.
Jazakallah for that, and with that we'll finish the program. So Jazakallah again for both of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.